I'm Peter Marks, theater critic for the Washington Post.
And I'm Elizabeth Vincentelli, and I write for the New York Times. And today we have two wonderful guests on Marks and Vincentelli. We're venturing out of our regular zone into the Mountain West of Colorado. We're going to talk to John D'Antonio from Creede Repertory Theater in Creede, Colorado, and Kate Berry, also from Creede Rep. John is the producing artistic director, and Kate is the marketing director. And they both also are often on stage there, because in Creede, everybody does everything.
All right, Elizabeth, Creede, right?
I know,
Creede,
right?
Colorado, Creede, as I know from reading your story, is in the middle of a national forest.
I think
right,
you can say
mountains.
Nowhere. That would be accurate.
No, I wouldn't
I'm sure they
say
won't.
that. But so I guess my question is, how the heck did you end up in Creede covering for the New York Times a story about this company in a community, I guess you went to with only a population 400 year round that obviously swells during the summer. How did this come to be?
Well, what happened is several years ago, I was Googling theater around the country. I was I would love to see I wanted to see what was happening in regional theater and what people were doing. And I don't know why, but I Googled the question, what's the most isolated theater company in the United States? This is true. This is what I did.
God.
And Creede Rep came up.
No.
And I looked and I was okay, I've got to go. I've got to go there. Also, I happen to, I'm a skier, as our listeners may or may not know. I have been to Colorado several times, but always in winter, so I'd never been there in summer. And Creede Rep has a summer season. And so I was such a pest. I bugged my editors at the Times for literally years, and it became a running joke because I would bring up Creede at every meeting. And finally, I think they just wanted me to stop, and they were fine, you can go. So,
all right, one question, because yes, we all have these wonderful kind of fantasy things we want to do. You imagine it's going to be a great story, but how did you know? The scary part of going to a place like Creede is, arriving and finding out it's amateur hour, or it doesn't really live up to what you imagined. How did you know that this was going to be a worthwhile endeavor?
Well, honestly, I didn't know. I didn't know how good it would be, but I thought that the worst case scenario, because really I didn't know what I was getting myself into, other than it looked great on the map.
I see. Right. You had a geographic urge to
But I knew
see their
that
work.
the theater has such a crazy story that I could always fall back on the history of the theater, which we'll ask John and Kate to tell us a bit about. But the theater has really, the backstory of how it came to be is really just fantastic. It is such a good story. So I thought, worst case scenario, I can fall back on that. I'll focus on the history of it.
I see.
And also on the economic impact, which is very, very real. And that was one of the things that interested me about it, is because I think a lot of times theater is seen as, those wacky artists,
right,
who need subsidies and blah, blah, blah. And they're doing these foo-foo things. Creede Theater is a huge economic engine in the area. It's it's the biggest employer in summer. It draws people to the area, and it literally, I think it's safe to say that it saved that town.
Just generally speaking, did you think the theater was good?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's the important thing.
Yeah, and I would see something 5 shows in 2 or 3 days, because they work in rep, so you can see a lot of shows in a short amount of time. And I had such a wonderful time. It was artistically and also on a human level, just such a great place. So I completely fell in love with it. I went in 2021. That was our first year after COVID. It was an outdoor season. It was also a little weird season. And then I went back last year on my own dime for my vacation. So I wrote a follow-up story.
Wow.
And then I went skiing in the area in February. It's nuts. I'm completely obsessed with that area. I just love it. But the theater is also very legit. So it's not like I'm saying, it's not a...
I get it.
No. It's a great
the
space.
return trip the return trip really speaks volumes.
Yes, because I would not have returned if the theater
Right.
was not good. The theater is
Right,
great. They
right,
actually have like
right.
the company stalwarts, Christy Brennan and Annie Butler are just like absolutely fantastic.
So I'm really excited about talking to John and Kate.
Welcome to the podcast, live from Creede, Colorado.
Hi.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having us.
So Creede has a storied history, which is a terrible way to put it, but it's got a kind of crazy history. Can you like give us the quick version of it and how it started? Because it's remarkable to have anywhere in the country a theater company that's been around since 1966, nonstop pretty much, except for COVID, but that was the same for everybody. And not in a major city as one might expect. So how did it got started?
Well, how far back you want us to go? You want to know? You want to know the real quick Creed origin? Like start there, and then we'll jump to the theater.
Sure, yeah,
Sure.
let's do that.
We'll give the 2-sentence Wild West history, and then we'll jump to the theater. So, Creede was the last silver boom town of Colorado, the last big silver boom, and so in 1892, Kate, is that right? 1892, I think.
Yep.
And it boomed to about 10,000 people. Bob Ford, who killed Jesse James, was here. He was killed here. Bat Masterson, Poker Alice, a lot of big, infamous Wild West characters were out here. So anyway, it was a mining town forever, for decades. And then in the 60s, the 1960s, a bunch of the mines, the silver mines closed, and a lot of the storefronts were closed, and the town was really hurting. And the Junior Chamber of Commerce had this idea: what if we turned that little movie house on Main Street into a theater and did plays? But they didn't have a clue how to do it. So they sent letters out to universities all across the Southwest. And they heard back from 18-year-old Steve Grossman from the University of Kansas in April saying, I could start you a theater. And he drove out with his buddy, Joe Roach, and they had a handshake agreement with the Junior Chamber of Commerce saying they would come back in a month and they would start a theater. And they were brilliant in that they knew it had to be repertory theater because they knew it was a tourist town. And sure enough, in I think May, they brought 12 of our founders from University of Kansas who did everything along with the community. So they directed, they acted in the shows, they built the sets. They were running on 2-hour sleep shifts. That initial, every 24 hours you got 2 hours of sleep. This town, they fed them every meal, they housed them, they donated their couches for the furniture for the sets. It was very much a joint production in many ways. Very beautiful thing. And that's how it all began. I think it was originally called Project Summer Theater. And then it became Creede Repertory.
Operation Summer Theater.
So much better. Operation Summer Theater.
Well, and we just recently found an article, or it was given to us, written by Joe Roach, who then went on to teach at Yale, who was one of the founders. He wrote an article for the KU publication in 1968. So we actually have a really cool archive of real time the struggles they were going through, which is sort of similar to now. And yeah, he mentions that they wanted it to sound less dire. So they changed it from Operation Summer Theater in 1968 to Creede Repertory Theater.
Less dire.
Less dire.
So what actually, why you just say was important for it to be a repertory company, which is the format is not used all that much in the US and it's very demanding format. Can you explain to us a little bit how that works?
Yeah, it is demanding and it is a challenge every step of the process. So our theater, we will open 5 core shows, 5 main shows as we call them, by mid-July. Our rehearsal processes overlap. So every 2 weeks, we're opening about every 2 weeks, sometime every week, we're opening another show in one of our 2 spaces. We change out the sets in those spaces every night or after a matinee. And so if you're here in the heart of July, you could see 5 different shows starring the same actors, same set designers, things like that. So we are a rotating rep theater since the beginning. Yeah.
And how many actors make up the company?
Pre-pandemic, we were at about 25. This season, I think we're 17 Yeah, 16, 17.
And is it a new company every summer?
No, we've got a good mix. We do have some real longevity. We've got a company member who has done literally 49 seasons with us, Christy Brandt. She is
Christy Brandt, icon.
icon,
Icon.
world famous.
Elizabeth is her biggest fan.
I am like president of the
It's a good fan to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad. But we got everything. So we've got company members who've done 10 years, but then we've got several second-year actors and company members and first years. And unlike a normal theater where, maybe your patron services team comes from the local city, maybe your musicians, maybe a lot of your team, we bring everybody, just about everybody in. Like of our 100 company members, we're bringing in at least 95. And from all over the country. So it's a special thing. You really get bonded with that group over the course of the summer.
So and you two are full-time, meaning like you live in Creede like year-round, right? There's not that many of you in the theater who are full-time year-round, right?
8.
So
there's 8 year-round staff members here,
Yep.
and and then the seasonal is about 100. Yeah, I moved from New York City to Creede 8 years ago. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How far a radius, if you drew a circle around Creede, how big would it have to be to find the next theater company?
Ooh.
Not well.
Did not see that coming.
there's Thingamajig, which it's a non-union theater, but it's over in Pagosa Springs, which is about
Pagosa Springs.
a 70-minute drive. It's over a mountain. You have to go over Wolf Creek Pass. And then there is Adams State Theater, which is part of Adams State University in Alamosa in the other direction, about 70 minutes. But yeah, in terms of live professional theater, thingamajig. And then you can go over to Durango. But there isn't really there's Rocky Mountain Rep. But that, I think, where is? Gosh, they're gonna kill me in Colorado for not knowing where Rocky Mountain Rep is. I'm gonna have to Google it.
This is the Creed moment. It's fine.
I do get out. I do get out of the house and out of Creed. Believe it or not.
But to paint the picture, we are rural and remote. So, like, just to paint the picture for anyone who's never been, which is probably most people hearing this. We're about a 5-hour drive from Denver, 4 hours from Colorado Springs. The nearest Walmart's an hour away, to give you an idea. We are surrounded by 97% national forest.
Wow.
We're gorgeous. There's literally cliffs right up the street from the theater. So we are surrounded by beauty. We're at 9,000 feet elevation, so we're really up there. And yeah, we are remote. We are very, very, very remote. No stop lights, no chain stores, three main streets, and you can walk everywhere. And a lot of beauty.
It takes effort to get here. Like, you have to really want to go here, right? to get here, because it's 5 hours from Denver. It's 2.5 hours from Durango, which does have an airport, but it's. You got to drive, and you got to do a beautiful drive. But it takes work to get here.
So Creede is basically a tourist destination for a lot of people. I mean, I think the town draws a lot from. Like, I think there's a lot of people who have like second homes there. A lot of people from Texas, I think.
Yes.
Like, what are the states that you draw from? Like, who comes there?
Sure, yeah. Morgan, just because we've kind of known generally, but Morgan, our managing director, Morgan Manfredi, pulled some numbers for us. And actually, 60% is from Colorado. But then the next highest is at least 25% from Texas. And then I believe Oklahoma, Santa Fe, there was another one in there, make up sort of 5% each. Arizona. But then there's a percentage of, like, you'll see an Illinois license plate, you'll see a New York license plate, you'll see, like, it really is, everywhere we get people who come in. But that's the main audience.
So how do you figure it? I looked at your website and I saw, which is a very well designed website, I thought, easily accessed, easily navigated. But I noticed that the range of shows is a really interesting mix. You seem to have an appetite for all kinds of theater that and you're counting on an audience that also has varied taste. Can you talk, the two of you, John and Kate, a little bit about how do you put together a season in a place where you've got an audience that is essentially, when they come into town, a captive audience? I mean, they're going to want something to do. How do you cater to them? How do you navigate between your own taste and what you think your audience is?
Yeah, actually,
up for?
and give us a bit of examples from this current season so our listeners can know what you guys are doing, because this season is like really like it hits a lot of different points.
Yes,
I think
it does, and I'll let John talk about that, and then we could talk about sort of how we get the word out or how we look at that.
Yeah.
But go for it, John.
So basically, we get this big hat, we throw a bunch of titles in, we do a real good stir, boom, done. I wish. No, it is extremely complicated and wonderful. We try to have something for everyone. We have to, like every theater, we have to do all the things. We have to try to balance our budget, but we have to try to have a deep why behind the shows we're putting on. For our company, because it's a young, passionate, amazing group, and they want that, and we want that. So we try to do it all. So typically we will, there's a little bit of a formula. We will try to have a bigger musical, and this is our first year in 5 years for a big musical again. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. We did Patsy Cline last summer, and then a couple of years off. From a musical, anyway, big musical, but yeah. So there's that. That's part of the equation. Our audience, they are on vacation, so they love to laugh, and so farce does very well here, comedy, whatnot, and they also love a good murder mystery. So Clue kind of touches both those boxes. Yeah, of course.
Seriously.
And part of the challenge with all these, is can we bring excellence to each show, whatever that is, and every show has its own set of demands, and that's part of the magic of this space. You come and you kind of, if you don't know much about it, you go in thinking you're going to expect to see one thing, and you leave being like, oh wow, that's not at all what I thought I would see. That's always that's what we're striving for. But then, so other things. So we're bringing back the Royale from Marco Ramirez. That show was in our season in 2022, but COVID struck pretty hard on the company a few days before we were heading into tech, and we ultimately had to take a 10-day pause. For anybody who doesn't know, that story, it's set in 1905. It's a period piece, time when the sport of boxing was segregated. And it follows Jay Jackson, based on Jack Johnson, the actual boxer Jack Johnson, African-American boxer who gets the chance to fight the white heavyweight champion of the world. And so it's about the lead up to the fight, and it explores what that's going to mean for him and all the pressure that is on him as he approaches that, along with his team, his trainer, his promoter, things like that. It's a gritty drama. It's beautiful, and it's fast and furious. You feel like in some ways you are at the match, even though we're not seeing actual physical boxing. Our tagline is, if you love theater but you hate boxing, you're going to love the show. If you love boxing but you hate theater, you're going to love this show. So it's got something for everyone.
You're covering all the bases.
Yeah, good, smart.
And it's got, even though it's set over 100 years ago, it's got incredible relevance, but it also has this beautiful side doorness of being set in this, the early 1900s and whatnot, and us getting to, have that as part of it. So, but if you take time to think about it, and you can't not, it has incredible relevance for today. So anyway, then we're also doing, we're bringing back from our outdoor season in 2021, Dear Jack, Dear Louise from Ken Ludwig. That was the big hit of that season. Elizabeth got to be out here for that outdoor season.
That play, by the way, was one of the pandemic hits. Like, it's been done so much because it's a two-hander. It's very easy to stage. But yeah, it's a really...
The actors are spaced for the most part. Yeah.
They're not together.
Yeah, totally. And that's the true story of Ken Ludwig's parents, how they fell in love over the course of the war without ever having met. And it's Ken Ludwig, king of comedy, but it's beautiful. It's just loaded with heart, and it's just a gorgeous play. It stars two of our longtime company members, Graham Ward and Caitlin Wise, and they're just beautiful and wonderful in it. So it's great to bring it into the intimate indoor space, having a roof over their head. They said, opening night, they were like, oh my God, I could hear the audience for the first time because we did it up on the hill with these beautiful San Juan Mountains behind us, but it was a wind tunnel for them the whole time. They couldn't hear almost anything. And so finally, the intimacy and the intricacy of the moments are at a new level. And then finally, as far as our core shows, we're very proud to have a world premiere this year by Beth Kander called Mountain Octopus. It is a beautiful show. Beth Kander has done, this is her third collaboration with CRT. Her first was Hazardous Materials, a world premiere in 2019, which Kate Barry was in. Got the Henry Award for Best New Play here in Colorado. And now Mountain Octopus, a play that we commissioned from Beth in 2020. And we did a reading as part of our Headwaters New Play Festival last summer. It's set in a fictional mountain town called Chance. Has a few parallels to this little place called Creede you might draw. But the basic story, the basic plot. A local sort of really amazing guy has passed away a year back, and his family runs the local diner where everybody congregates, and it's been closed for a year. And now it's about the reopening of that diner and how all the locals, but also a few tourists, are getting ready to come back out and celebrate and be together, but with all the baggage that we all have from these last few years that we haven't maybe all quite dealt with, and this and that. Kate is in that play. Kate, you want to speak to that? It's such a gorgeous show.
Oh, yeah. It's just, Beth has mentioned that she wanted to write a pandemic play without it being a pandemic play. So it doesn't, the word pandemic happens a couple of times, but also like the main character didn't die from the pandemic. It was something else, but it's also the dynamics of people getting back together. Also things that are very real for us here in terms of year-round residents to Creede, locals or people who've lived here most of their lives, people who come in for the summers, people who come in for just a short time. And there's as kind of a stand-in for the theater, there's like a hiking company, where people go to do like hiking trips in this play. So people go to do a specific activity. But there's a beautiful monologue about, if you only love a place for a couple weeks a year, say, and you're not there for the rest of, people taking out the trash or there for the winter, etc. Is it really love? Do you really love it? There's just some really wonderful ideas in there. And yeah, it's kind of a neat, I guess some people have referred to it as like a homegrown play. But I mean, we worked with Beth. We really wanted to use some company members that we have regularly and also use the commission to really, it doesn't always have to be set in Creede or be a play about Creede, but this one kind of is and it's not, because it has, big ideas as well that I think a lot of people relate to.
So you've also been very active in kind of pushing like new voices, because you have like a new play festival. Like how long has that been going on? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it's not just doing like fun stuff. And I mean, well, that's fun too. The new plays are fun too. I don't want to mean that, but.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a fun stat, since 2000, a third of the plays that CRT has produced have been world premieres. And that loops in our educational programming, which is almost entirely based in new work and whatnot, but also on our main stages as well. And about 11 years ago, the process was all formalized through the Headwaters New Play Festival.
And we have to explain the name. The name, of course, is because Creede is by the headwaters, the Rio Grande. Right? Which when you drive up, you see the river.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the best fly fishing in the country, no doubt about it. Not that I catch a lot of the fish, but I definitely try. It's pretty popular here.
So you were talking earlier about how, like, for instance, Beth Kander, like, worked into the new play some company members that you have, like, because one of the other things, like, so you have to balance the kind of plays you do, but you also have company members, and you have to make sure that kind of everybody gets something to do. So,
Yeah, no,
is that part
absolutely.
of the thinking? So, I guess you're looking for some ensemble shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this new play has 7 characters in it, and that's rare for a new play these days. It seems like, it seems like 5 or under seems to be where it's at right now. But yeah, no, definitely, we're always looking. I think I would, if Christy Brandt was not in a season, it'd be my final season. So I'm always looking, no doubt about it. I'm always keeping an eye out of what might be that role for Christy, that's a beautiful way to do it. When you have a playwright who knows the strength of the actors, why not utilize that?
I'm curious, I love the idea of a play set in Creede being done in Creede. I happen to think that theater that feels organic and feels like it talks to the community often has a special authenticity that I look for in theater. I think even of like playwrights that have become to the fore from out west, like Samuel Hunter, bases all his plays in Idaho, and after a while, obviously it's distilled through one voice. You don't get a complete portrait of Idaho, but I love the idea of coming to Creede and seeing a play written about Creede. I'm curious what happens to the plays after they're done in Creede? Do they become part of your repertory? Do you seek other outlets for them? Is there any additional echo of the work that you guys do?
In the past, we've had a few touring opportunities here and there. We used to have a nice partnership with the Arvada Center on the Front Range up in Arvada near Denver, where we were able to bring a show, so avenues in that way. In recent times, though, it's been more up to the particular playwright. If they are able to, through their networking and whatnot, create opportunities, and we'll do our part as far as our theater, whatever we're able to do as far as sharing with, smaller theaters or folks who might be a good fit. But yeah, it ends up being a scramble. That second production is always, it's the elusive second production, no matter where, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally
And
true.
I do know that Beth had a lot of interest in hazardous materials after our show, including a company in Denver. But then the pandemic happened and she kind of writes about that in her playwright notes for Mountain Octopus. I think that it just kind of disappeared. And, and she was a little bit like, am I ever going to write a play again? Are we ever going to do theater again? Which I think, there is some of that, even though it's not like a literal discussion of that. Beth started writing it in 2020, wondering, because I think she mentions that, John and I contacted her, and she was just like, oh God, yes, I will, because I'm in this place thinking I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting sort of subtext, I think.
Hazardous Materials is the name of the play. It's not that she's bringing toxic waste into the theater, right? Oh, okay.
No.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. It's actually, it's lovely. It's essentially two-person plays. Like there's there's a 1955 and 2015, although it's the same apartment. And they're trying to figure out which of these two women from the 1955, because an elderly woman passed away, and they're trying to figure out her identity in 2015. And so you're going back and forth between this kind of hoarder apartment, like this one of these women, woman had a tough time, and she became a hoarder. And then we're seeing sort of the clean apartment in 1955, and it goes in this scenic design by Lindsay Fiore, who's also designing most of our sets this season, designed this set that would part and the new one would come out, and it was stunning. It was just a amazing production, and there was interest that kind of just got whoop. So I hope that interest refreshes for her. So theater folk, if you're listening, Beth Kander, Hazardous Materials.
Good.
Our commission this year, Peter, is by Leonard Madrid, a New Mexico-based playwright, called The Prima's Guide to Funerals. It's set in Alamosa in the San Luis Valley. Beautiful, hilarious comedy, but also beautiful. About this character going through the mourning process along with her 2 cousins. And 3 characters. We do have interest when that, I think ultimately will find its way to the CRT stage in a future season. the possibility of taking that around the San Luis Valley or a little further, because it's a play that will be built for that. But also given the setting and the characters and this and that, it might be fun to also get out to the Hispanic community of the San Luis Valley and whatnot. So that, anyway, it's something on our radar as we look forward. But there is an element here of like, and we're okay with it, I think, of like the magic happens here. And were you able to make it down for it? And we're okay with that a little bit. It's sort of this safe little beautiful artistic bubble.
Makes
in a
sense.
Way. Yeah,
makes sense.
So a lot of I think like the aftermath of COVID is really hitting now. It's almost like some kind of delayed reaction. There's been like some really bad news, percolating recently, like the Mark Taper Forum in LA. Bigger institutions too. Are kind of skipping a season, and there's like layoffs, there's like smaller seasons. So you didn't have a season like everybody in 2020, basically, also because your season is in summer, so clearly that was out. So in 2021, you had an outdoors season on a smaller scale, and you're kind of like climbing back to like regular speed. So why do you think, like I'm wondering if the fact that you're smaller has made you maybe nimbler and able to adapt, or I don't know, or is it harder to withstand? Like, how are you guys faring? Like 2 years, like no, three summers after COVID.
Our success comes down to one thing and one thing only: management, the core staff. That's it. There's nothing.
Wow, it's nice you put the staff in there, John. I thought you were going to say to one amazing man.
Visionary.
Okay, so Creede is lucky to have a visionary at the helm. We're lucky to have that visionary with us today. Oh my God.
Elizabeth, I hear you. In those, we do the doom scrolling. We see the headlines every week. It's terrifying and it's so sad. Like I know, yes, we see that. I think, Kate, you could speak to this too. It's a balance for us. We're feeling a lot of the same challenges everyone's feeling. The inflation, the costs are way up, and we're feeling that like absolutely 100%. Where we are lucky is that it's the magic equation of this place, the remoteness of it. It's that radius that Peter was asking about of how, there is not a movie theater here in town and whatnot. And the fact that so many of our patrons have been coming for decades, like it is a lot of our patrons, they might not see theater in Dallas, but you bet they see theater when they come to Creede. We hear that a lot.
Interesting.
It's fascinating. And so we're very fortunate in that sense. And I'm not saying we're exactly back to pre-pandemic, but we've been very strong the last summer, and our projections this year are looking really good as we head into the heart of July, as we head into July, which is the really crazy time. Is that fair to say, Kate, as far as ticket sales, or would you want to elaborate?
Yeah. I mean, I think, nonprofit theater is always, I always go back to a quote from Nagel Jackson, who ran like the McCarter Theater, and he's directed out here, was like there in the 50s at Oregon Shakespeare Festival. But he's like, being the artistic director of a nonprofit theater company is being the captain of a sinking ship. And like, so I think like I think that we are not as dire as some other companies, but it's still a struggle. I mean, rep theater is really hard. It costs a lot to do. You're trying to make that back. We rely heavily on donors as well, a big donor base. But I also think it's helpful that we own our buildings. We own them outright. I mean, it's been, or they were paid off pre-pandemic. So we're not a space that is leasing, it's a $60,000 lease every month to the city or some other entity that we are then losing, that if there's no income, how are you gonna maintain that? But I think this is the first year too without any assistance, pandemic assistance, and I think that's hurting a lot of theaters as well.
So about your audience, I'm really curious. Do they come into town with tickets? Have they bought before they've come? How much of your audience is people just sort of like happening on CRT? And also, do you get a lot of feedback? I mean, I would imagine when you're this sort of like, boots on the ground with your community, that you have to have a lot of interaction with people and how they feel about any one performance.
Yes. And I think there were like 7 questions in that.
Yeah,
Peter,
yeah,
but,
of course. Sorry,
yes.
I think there were 15 questions.
Yeah. I'll speak to sort of and then John can, because John actually I think deals with a lot of the feedback directly. Like I get some of the audience feedback, but John will have like somebody who's been coming for 30 years comes up and says, John, I really didn't like that, or I loved something like that.
Right.
Good and bad. But I think it's interesting because we do try to get strong pre-sales. Or we have something called a flex pass that if you buy earlier, some pricing things. And there's just many components to our audience. They're not necessarily one thing. Like, we get the people who buy early have been coming for years and know they want to come. There's been several people that I'm guessing is a larger percentage saying, hey, we're actually feeling more comfortable coming back and traveling. So I think some of our pre-pandemic folks who were maybe a little more hesitant in 2021 and 2022 are coming back. Then there's the summer folks. We've been working hard this year, marketing wise, really pairing the theater with Creede itself because it's such a unique place that pairing, like you can't really talk about the theater without talking about Creede itself and all the things to do in Creede in addition to seeing the theater, like ATVing, fishing, hiking, all of those things. And then something this year I've tried to really cultivate is more in-town signage. So the people who are coming in perhaps for different reasons, at the RV park or just specifically to go fishing or hiking through on the Continental Divide. We get some people coming in there, that there's more signage of Creede Repertory Theater, live theater since 1966.
I don't know how you could miss the theater since there's one street. Like,
you
how
would
can
be
you
surprised. You would be surprised, though. We got some feedback of like, hey, I've been coming here since I was a kid, and I just now realized there's a theater. You know what I mean? Like, people don't see what they don't see, I think. And you kind of, I know it sounds insane, but that really is. Or if they're new to this area and they didn't realize, or they,
Right. Well,
a lot of people
that's-
think it's a movie theater, or they think it's a place to see live music or something. They don't quite. This is a place where I can see plays.
So
Right.
for the Hicks out in New York and Washington and other cities that are listening here, what's different about doing theater in a place like Creede? Is it different, John? I know, John, you said you were from New York. What's different about year in and year out doing putting on plays for this community, for some place that we don't necessarily think of as a theater town, which is a wrong kind of way to think, obviously.
My first few seasons before I joined the staff in 2015, 2011, for 4 seasons, I kept coming from New York as, a freelance actor, basically, or a playwright. And I remember, as New York was starting to get hot and I was going, I'd be down in the subway and it'd be like, okay, it's time to get to the mountains. Many times, it was literally like a clock. Okay, it's time. And so it's partially about the setting of where you're doing theater. There's something I think good for the soul about it. Like you are surrounded by unparalleled beauty here. And I'm an outdoorsy person too. And so there's something about doing art, which hopefully we all love to do, but doing it in this setting where there's just something that aligns with it, and seeing art in this place. And then after you see that moving show, go for a walk up the canyon and talk about it with your partner or whatever. There's something about that here. And the lack of oxygen in the air because
I was going to say, and you can't breathe. So maybe it just feels like it's different, but you actually we're actually all just hallucinating.
lost brain
Your brain is lacking oxygen, so you think everything is amazing.
That's hilarious.
But it's a bit, it's just about the work here. I mean, don't get me wrong. Of course, the New York scene is incredible, but half the game. not maybe half the game, but a third of the game in New York is always a part of your brain that's like, and who might see this show, and how does this help lead to the next one? And the honest truth is, here it's about the work, and it's about the connection with the community. And again, you're seeing people that have seen shows for decades. I did the curtain speech the other night, and it was so fun. There was a group of cross-country runners from Oklahoma, their first live theater they had ever seen. And in the front row, there was a woman who had been to a show every season for 42 seasons. She was 97 years old. It was her birthday.
Wow.
And I got to acknowledge that in the curtain speech, the juxtaposition of that, which was so special. And jumping back, Peter, to your question a second ago, I think our trajectory, it's about continuing to increase the professionalism of what we do here, but without losing the heart, the accessibility, that in-touchness we have here that all of our founders had, and we've had every year ever since. So that's the trajectory, and that pushes against each other all the time. So like now, we track every hour of work. So if it's not 2 hours of sleep you got. When are your 2 hours? We track every minute, and people are being paid a little better. I wish I could say it was living wage. We're working towards it, but folks are getting paid better. We've got this cool second year of a fully covered childcare program. So there's a lot of parents here. I think there's something like 14 kids that are going to be in the company this year. It's like mind blowing. So we're trying to do all that, but also though, keep the accessibility. So it's about me or the staff members, we still do curtain speeches. The office is the first one right here. Just come and say hi. We're down there. We know the names of most of our folks. We try to get to know the folks who are new and invite them back. Like we try to keep it accessible, and that's something about the specialness of what's happening here. So
that's kind of funny. I mean, the idea of you look out in the audience, everybody. It's like
it's not a joke. Like
no, I know.
Here's the crazy thing about Creede, right? It's not a joke. Like because I'll look in the audience and especially the locals. Everybody played a part in making the theater what it is. Like everybody. So like. Oh my gosh, my grandfather was one of those JCs that voted yes for the theater in '66. My brother did the renovation in the '90s, and I helped him out. I built the roof.
I love that.
I'm a show sponsor. I can't afford that, but I buy an ad every year, so I'm in your program. Like the list goes on.
Ownership.
On and on and on. Like the ownership of this place is absurd. Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting because it's a very small town, so you're bringing in, as you're saying, like most of the company every summer. So you have to find housing, and I know we had talked about that last summer, right? Because that's kind of like a problem because of course you also have a lot of tourists who come, so everybody's looking for a place, and it's getting tight in there. Like, what do you guys have like long-term plans for? Like, what are you guys going to do for housing?
John, we should talk about our dreams. The dreams.
Yes. For anybody who's getting interested about Creede or CRT, you'll go to hotels.com and you won't see anything when you type in Creede, right?
No.
As I've learned the hard way.
Interesting.
I think I had to say, Elizabeth, don't look on that.
No, I know.
Here's the chamber webpage.
Yeah, no,
because it's really the close. I can't remember if it was you or another person I was talking to that was like, it says the closest thing to you is South Fork, and I was like, yes, because there's a Comfort Inn in South Fork. No. There's there are places to stay, but you're not going to find it on Orbitz.
But the Airbnb, the VRBO market is out of control. We own housing, but that can only house up to 36 of our company members. And we say 100, but not everyone, at the one time, maybe 50, 55 people are here at the most. And so we also have to rent every single location you can imagine, an apartment above a garage, a house in town, a little thing out in a ranch somewhere, wherever it might be, we will take it to help get a roof over everyone's head. And it gets very tight. And our poor company manager and managing director, it comes down to the wire every year that we're going to find a place for everyone. So we know we need to expand. So that's on our dream list, is that we need to expand on housing so that we can also open up more housing for more tourists and more visitors and whatnot. So it's a crunch.
Yeah. Has the relationship going with the locals, like not the ones who come in summer, but like the local community, because it's it's a mountain town, and some people maybe not always see eye to eye with some of the theater folks who come to town. And like, I know you guys have had to, like, it requires a lot of diplomacy and compromise, which crazy words right now, compromise and listening to each other and basically talking to people. I think one of the things you guys had told me was you just have to talk to people.
Yeah, I really have to give it to John here. He is very, very good at, if there is an issue that comes up, knock on wood, I haven't heard of one this season. That doesn't mean one hasn't happened or what, but John is very good kind of going into that situation and talking to those other humans who may not agree with us or a situation has been misunderstood. But John is very, very good about just talking to people, hearing what they have to say and saying, this is where we're coming from. And I'll let him talk more about that. But I did want to give him some kudos for something that I think is a skill, John, that you have, because you have smoothed out some situations that in other hands may have kind of blown up.
So what are some of the situations? You don't have to get into specifics, to not identify anything, but like what kind of things, kind of testy things did you have to deal with?
No, I get you. Thanks, Kate, for that lead in. I'll Venmo you later.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also that bottle of whiskey. I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah, I got you. No, definitely. I think often, Elizabeth, it has been connected with our EDI work, our equity, diversity, inclusion work. Sometimes because we were moving too quickly, we didn't have the infrastructure in place or the communication needed, and folks weren't ready for certain steps. So often, I guess honestly, often it's connected with that. Some of the like hotter moments through the years that pop up. I remember we put pronouns into the program in 2000. When was that, Kate? Do you remember what year that was? 2000?
18 or 19.
Yeah, I mean, that got a lot of questions and a lot of things. The option of doing it, of course, for no one had to, but the option of doing it for company members, and that got a lot of questions. And so that was one. There were times, oh my goodness, just like so many little things. Maybe a choice in a show that maybe someone wasn't ready for, this or that, or maybe I don't know. Let's see. I remember often it's print. That's the interesting thing. It's often print. It has to do with like the printed word. Like that's the beauty of a one-on-one conversation is so great. Like you get to just listen to each other, hopefully, and hear where they're coming from. And there's maybe a point in there too. You got to hear, everyone's got their points. But yeah, something about the printed word has always been so delicate. Like, we have our own mission, vision for the theater, but we have also our EDI mission and this and that. And then just the way it aligned in the program, people thought that had become the entire theater's mission. And we were like, oh, okay, we learned about just little things like that. And the beauty is that you should always worry when no one is coming up and voicing a concern. That's when you're in trouble. Like when that's not happening, then it's like, uh-oh, this is too quiet or something. Right. So I'm always thrilled and appreciate when someone does that. And then it's rare, but like there's a case, there can be, it's usually not from a local, but maybe a tourist or this or that. Someone says something that's rude in a bar or something, things once a summer, twice a summer, you might hear about something like that. That probably happens, I imagine, in every little town or every place. But here we have the luxury of often we might know the person, so we could go talk. You know what I mean? We could go say, hey, what's the deal with that? So I don't know.
I'm sure I think the artistic director at Lincoln Center has been known to break up fights in bars. They do that all the time over there. Like it's well known as the rough Lincoln Center environment. Oh my God. Okay.
But there are usually gangs of artistic directors roaming in Times Square.
Yeah, they're the worst.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing.
Oh my God.
Can I say real quick, Peter, the beauty of it though, here's the beautiful thing. Because like so many theaters are in a wonderful way committed to EDI work, initiative. The beauty of it here, though, is that like we really do have like our audience and our company, and we've got a lot of different point of views at the table. We really do. People are voting very differently, different, as far as, pro-military audience, a very religious-based audience, this and that. And so it really does create an amazing place here. And I love that. And the fact that, our audience and our company, and it's such a small town, you're going to run into each other at the grocery store.
Right.
And that's the way it works here.
Right.
There's no anonymity.
Yeah.
And we see that as a real positive, even though it can make for some, some moments of tension. I think it's really a positive.
And,
so,
and it's there's been elements of that since the beginning, because they brought in these young hippies, essentially to
and
run
Mandy
this theater.
Patinkin.
And Mandy Patinkin in the early 70s. Yes. That there's just these wild and crazy kids. Christy Brandt has a fun story just about, they thought that all of these young people were just, having sex and doing drugs. And Christy was like, we didn't have time for that. Sorry to let you down.
We were painting sets.
We were painting sets
right,
and hanging lights
it.
and, and trying to rehearse. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So in wrapping up, can
Yes.
we just, how do people who are in the Creede vicinity
Or not,
how do they
or
how do
not.
they book? They go to your website? Is that the best way?
Yeah, I'm going to take this, John. We've got many modes we've got the website, which is just creederep.org. Anything is available online.
With an E, right? C-R-E-E-D-E.
Yes, CREEDEREP. .org. Yes. You can contact our box office, which is open. This is Mountain Time, Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., 10 to 2 p.m. on Sundays. We are dark on Mondays, try and give people a break. But we also have, we have a new messaging platform this year. So whether it's a Facebook ad, I know, Elizabeth, she looks shocked.
I'm very impressed.
Social media, Facebook, Instagram. There's also some ads that are specifically like ask us a question. We have a platform that allows us to see all of that at one time, and there's usually someone monitoring it, me, a lot of the time, as well as our box office. So if you don't want to talk to a person, but you want to sort of talk to them on your phone, you can do that as well. Yep. Or stop in. If you're in town,
yes.
just stop in the theater.
If you're in the area.
If you're in the area.
Or not. Just make a trip. If I could, I know where I would be. Alas, it's not the summer, but I'm already thinking next one.
Yes.
Kate and John, thank you so much. And Elizabeth, thank you for bringing to national attention this company. You all have whet my appetite. I would love to spend some time in Creede and see the
Peter, you have
entire
to go.
main
You have to
stage
go.
5-play rep if I could.
Bring your hiking shoes and your theater lorgnette. And you'll be ready.
Elizabeth has my email. I mean, seriously, if you're considering, we'll get you to see some shows.
Far out.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks again. This has been really
Thank
fun
you.
hearing about CRT.
Thank you both.
Okay. Oh my God, that was so much fun. I love these guys. You know what? They're such hard workers. And the funny thing is, like, it's true what they were saying, that if you walk around there, and by the way, still Configure has some people could not see that there's a theater there because there's banners all over. There's like one main street, and there's banners all over it. So I don't know how you could not see that there's a theater, but okay.
You know why? Elizabeth, I think it's because if you're not looking for it, you don't see it. And I think that's that's what John basically said. I do think theater does not enter some people's consciousness as an activity. They just don't, it doesn't even cross their minds.
It's true. No, and it's true. And I think the theater, actually, I think Creede Rep does a really good job at entering these people's minds. And listen, what was amazing to me also is that when I was in those audiences, I was next to people that I'm never next to in New York, which is where I see 99% of my theater. And it makes for a very different experience when you can feel the people next to you reacting in a completely different way from what you might imagine. I think it is. I think that's what they were alluding to also, that it's a very enriching experience. And like being not just reading about people and demonizing them, on social media, but sitting next
Right.
to them and being in the same room. It makes a huge difference. So
True.
it kind of like restored my faith in humanity, which sounds completely grandiose, but it's actually true. It's very true. Anyway, so okay, that's another episode. I feel like we're firing on all like evil cylinders right now. Like between today and like Janine Tesori and David Lindsay-Aubert. Oh, and we have a very special guest also lined up for our next one, which we're not going to reveal, but it's going to be really fun. And I think we could have like a real fight on our hand in the next show. This is just a bit of a teaser. So I'm assuming that if you're listening to this, you're familiar with Marx Vincentielli at Substack.com. That's where you can find us. Go back there and subscribe to us by paying again. I know you already, are a paid subscriber. Maybe not, but if you're not, you should be. And if you are, but like, just do it again. Like, extend.
Yes.
Make a donation. I'm a freelancer. So...
Yeah, and it's marxvincentielli.substack.com.
Yes.
That is the place to be. And we're going to cook up more interesting conversations for you for as long as you're interested and are willing to follow us along.
Yes, we like to chat.
So, while we continue to do that, please join us here and follow us on Twitter for updates and other kinds of tidbits. My Twitter handle is Peter Marx Drama. And my partner, Elizabeth, is E. Vincentelli. So thank you for being with us this time. And until next time, we'll see you here on Marx and Vincentelli.